Got it.
Hey, John Donovan,
Hey, Marty. How you doing?
welcome. I'm doing good.
Good. Me
Nice
too.
to, as always, to be in dialogue with you, and I'd like to welcome everybody to this installment of the Intentional Living podcast. Um, in this podcast, we work on the practical work of breaking patterns of behavior that I say I don't want to have, and I feel compelled to do anyway. The
Hmm.
the the mystery, sometimes it seems like the mystery of our inner life, what we call the subconscious, which, as we've talked about many times on this podcast, might be as much as 99% of our entire mind might be in our
Right.
subconscious. So that's a
Yeah.
lot of space for things to occur that we're not aware of. And
Right.
so uh, we like to spend as much time as we can demystifying these behaviors and taking a look into what's going on in my inner life. Um, and the For the newcomer, this is part of a practice that my friend and colleague here, John Donovan, developed over the last 25 years, which we call intentional living or accountability practice. Accountability practice. We did a couple podcasts on the way this works in the last month, so you might want to go check out or any of our podcasts where we talk about the ABCs or the introduction to accountability practice. So we go over the how this works, what's going on, and
Hmm.
in our most recent podcast, we talked about the reason why we're doing this work, which is that in our childhood, almost all of us developed some kind of uh, response to what's called complex PTSD. That is, or as I like to call it, the trauma of a thousand paper cuts. Little things where we felt frustrated, harmed, violated, and had no power to change that. We had no power to say to our mom or our dad, "Hey, this hurts. Please don't do this," or
Right.
"I don't know
Yeah.
what to do," or um, you talked in our most recent podcast about watching your dad hit your mom, or when I
Right.
grew up, my parents would yell and scream at each other and throw things at each other. And I can still now, I'm 72 years old, I can still feel my little body quivering in fear
Yeah.
and utter terror because it's felt life threatening.
Hmm.
So we're talking about those kinds of experiences that all of us have had, and many of them we don't even remember
Right.
because our minds have such power to dissociate, to pull us away from the actual experience, to forget about it. But what we're dealing with here is the fact that that stuff doesn't actually go away.
No.
It may be hidden from our conscious mind, but it's still there.
Right.
So, John, you developed this accountability practice. I've been working with you on this now for 13 years, and so we want to talk today about why the hell are we doing this? What's the reward? What's the
Yeah.
reward for um, this often excruciating work? And I say it's excruciating only in the sense that it's going. When I started to do this work in something we might call more generically recovery, so
Right. Hmm.
alcoholic who wants to recover his sobriety or her sobriety, or the adult children of the child of alcoholics who wants to recover his or her sense of self. Um,
Yeah. Hmm.
what we're doing this for a reason, and it takes a lot of work because the resistance that scared little kid has created this defense that's been living unchanged in our subconscious for years and years and years and years. And
Hmm.
I don't know about you, but I can now look back on my life and see how I kept reinforcing that. So it just
Yes.
kept grounding it deeper and deeper into my
Deeper in.
subconscious.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it takes work to shift that,
Yeah.
just only because it's that deeply grounded in a little child um, cannot not survive. So
Right. Right.
we
Yeah.
have to form these mechanisms of defense as little children. And as we talked about in our previous podcast, generally speaking, the model we had for how to defend ourselves was our parents.
Right.
And so that there's the old saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And part of it is genetic. Yes, we have our parents' genetic material, but we also have their psychic material.
Right.
because
Energetic material, yeah.
it's all that we know.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, that's life, and that's the way we've evolved so far. But
Mm-hmm.
we've also evolved to learn healing. And today we'd like to focus on the results of all this hard work. What are we doing this for? What's the 180 degrees on the other side of the traumatized little child? What's the free and unencumbered adult experience like? So I'll stop
Exactly.
there and
That's the question. And
toss you the ball there, John.
thank you. In the 12 steps, they have a list of promises. One of the promises is you will come to a life you never knew possible. Another promise is fear of financial struggle will disappear. I'm paraphrasing. Fear of authority figures will go away. Another one is fear of criticism seen as a threat will shift. So all these promises, when I first read them, I thought that's a big. I'll never have that. It's like I don't even know what that is.
Sure.
And in my process of recovery, in my developing this accountability process in my own personal work, I've experienced the result of each one of those promises. I used to go through the promises and check out no, 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 no. And recently I've gone through them and they're all yeses. The payoff for me was finding my authentic expression, how I express and how I see and how I am. Uh, uh, and that fits into purpose or meaning. And I've also developed a sense that I belong in my sphere of friends and community. I belong. Um, what's his name that started William Glasser that started Rational Recovery. One of his statements was the biggest human need is the need to belong. And through this work, through my recovery work, 12-step work, and now this what I call second level recovery work with an accountability tree. And this is not the only one. There's Gabriel Mate has a modality, Basil van der Kolk, Peter Levine. They all have ways to get to that unresolved pool of trauma, and all that trauma is in our subconscious. As human beings, we have the capacity to remember every moment of our lives and store it someplace in our memory. And that's where we hold the trauma. And the trauma, early childhood trauma is what they call pre-verbal. In other words, I can't explain it to you. Even if I did find it, I couldn't have the words to explain it. Another way to say it is nonverbal. Even though in my younger years I did know how to speak, I did know language and how to communicate, I didn't have the words to explain the physiology of trauma, what was going on inside. So most of the trauma that's set in place is nonverbal or pre-verbal. And we talked about the display of unresolved complex post-traumatic stress. For me, it was rageaholic, violent, alcoholic, workaholic. Okay, that's the display of unresolved pre-verbal, nonverbal. It's in the form of a frequency. So in my recovery, the first thing I wanted that I knew I didn't have was peace of mind. I didn't know to ask. I didn't even know to ask for an authentic life. That wasn't even in my scope of my frame of reference. And as I went through recovery and learned and gleaned information from a lot of different sources, I got to the place where I came to create a picture of what this result would be. At first, I just wanted to be okay. Just want to be okay. I want to be okay and not care about anybody, which made sense to me. Now, no, I want to express authentically and know that I care deeply about all the people in my vicinity, not just the good ones and the nice ones and the people are on my side, all people. So the payoff for me is self-validation, sense of space, sense that I take up I'm valuable, what I count, I'm meaningful. In every community I belong to, and I belong to my familiar community, my daughters and my grandson, that's a community. I have a place, and it's I participate in the day-to-day things instead of what I did before was control the day to make sure everybody's okay and make sure everybody's doing it right and the soaps and the dishes and everything's cool. Where now it's just I'm in this flow and I'm moving and I'm playing with my grandson or saying silly things or irritating my daughters with certain things I do that I know irritate the shit out of them, and being part of um, accepting the capacity to just and I know just is a just accept myself just the way I am. Just I'm not perfect. I have little peculiarities. I do weird things, and I have little obsessions, and they're all. It's okay, and I make a difference. I'm part of this. What I now see is an expanding race consciousness. And like I said, there's different spheres of relating. My familiar, my coworkers, my friends, my colleagues. I'm part of this, and it's a dynamic flow, and I get to articulate and speak, and sometimes say really inane things. And okay, that's John, and we just move on instead of having blocks and barriers. And I don't know if that answered your question, but
Well, it's a good start. My
yeah,
experience,
yeah,
well, to alert to particularly the ones watching this for the first time, we're talking about creating a life where we step into infinity as opposed to staying inside limitations. And there's exhilaration in stepping into infinity, and there's also potential fear because it's the opposite of control.
hmm,
It's like, am I willing to be out of control? Well, what does freedom mean? Freedom from what? And what we're talking about here, it's initially, because I think there's gradations of this as we learn.
yes,
Certainly there have been for me. So initially, it's like you said, I just want peace.
yeah,
And peace for all of us that are looking for that as our initial want essentially means freedom from pain and stress. So it's an end to the compulsions, an end to the self-criticism, an end to
yeah,
the potential for or the potentiality to do violence to ourselves or to people we love.
yeah,
Just so it's like the peace starts out as the absence of stress,
hmm,
reduction of adrenaline, secretion of those other hormones that are calming and easy flowing.
yeah, yeah,
And what I've discovered is that that can be enough. And it opens the doorway now that I'm at peace, now that I feel safe, it opens the doorway for anything.
anything and
Okay,
all things.
so it's like here's the image. I now feel um it's absolutely okay to go rest in my hammock in my backyard and under my shady oak tree.
Yeah,
Well, how many people can stay in a hammock for the rest of his or her life?
yeah,
Most of
yeah,
us can't. So
right,
I'm in
right,
the hammock and I'm swinging back and forth and I'm feeling utterly free and I'm supported.
yeah, yeah,
And my mind goes, okay, what do I want to do next? And this is what we're talking about here. In the old days, when I was still addicted to my family of origin dysfunction body chemistry, my mind would go to trying to make some trouble for myself because this peaceful energy would be unbearable.
Yeah.
And so, in order to validate my sense of being alive, I would go generate a drama, I would go cause trouble as a way of getting attention, as a way of asking for love rather than just calling you up and going, I'm feeling lonely today. Can we talk? I would generate some kind of drama. Hey, John, did you hear what so and so said about you? That kind of stuff. And so now, in this world of actual freedom, I may actually have those thoughts, and I go, no, I don't want that.
No.
No, I don't want that. I actually would like to experience genuine, authentic joy. So I- I'm in the world of all possibilities. And all of us, I know you want to say something, I'll just wrap this up. And all of us have certain talents and certain things that we enjoy, and that's where we get to go in this new world.
Yes.
And I'll stop there and
Well, I wanted
listen.
to say it's like when you said I'm gonna create drama. That's not something you did consciously. It was a
No,
default mode, and the only way I could feel good about myself was having an enemy or an adversary, and and gaining a group of people who believe the way I did, or I call it collusion. Did you see what so and so did? And then just going into that and staying into that. I didn't do that on purpose. I thought I was helping or pointing out things or participating in life. I remember saying to my sponsor one day, well into recovery, that, oh, I'm bored. And he said to me, John, would you be willing to consider that what you're calling bored is the serenity you're looking for? No drama, no chaos. I wasn't creating drama, or I wasn't looking, or I wasn't building a posse. I was just like, what do I do now? What do I want? Which was unfamiliar to me because I
exactly.
always had to have this excitement in my life. And I didn't wake up and go, oh, I'm going to have excitement in my life. I thought that's the way you acted. That's the way good people are, is like pointing out, bad people and making sure everybody's okay and knows all the gossip, because when you get around that, all that stuff that no longer has any meaning to me whatsoever. In fact, is something, if I see, I don't really remember how I was. I can tell stories about how I was, but that old drama chaos life is so far removed. And this life that I find myself in after doing my recovery work and what we call the accountability process of owning my part in everything that's happening to me, is not I'm the victim, I'm the participant in creating victimhood, because that's what matched my childhood. This is all subconscious. That's why we talk about being in a pattern of behavior you don't want, like alcoholism, workaholic, rageaholic. I found myself in that pattern over and over, not knowing that that it was there for the purpose of keeping me alive, survival. Only the mechanism, the old information that the mechanism was being fed, no longer existed. But that's the only way it's not like I didn't know it. That's what I did to survive, because that's the example I had in my childhood. So the awareness that, oh, it's me, I'm posturing as a victim. People will treat somebody who looks like a victim and acts like a victim. And when I owned that and um, intended to do something different, this shift happened. And I find myself in what I talked about either this time or the time before, the promises, not being afraid of authority figures, not seeing criticism or somebody's opinion as a threat to my well-being. I see it as an observation and an opportunity for me to readjust or confirm what I do know and move on. So Yeah. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to be all messed up. I'm going to be a drama queen. I'm going to be chaos. I'm going to live in chaos. And that's a result of this unhealed trauma. The mechanism that creates this trauma is doing it so that I can survive. That's how I survived my childhood, was by making people wrong and making other people right and trying to be a good kid. Okay, so I'm doing that in my adulthood for the purpose of survival. This mechanism, reticular activating system, in the survival mechanism, fight, flight, freeze, please, adrenaline producing mechanism, is will do anything to keep me alive based on what I know life is, which is family of origin dysfunction, dad yelling, mom screaming, all that. Um, it's not a malevolent thing. The end result is separation, destruction, hurt, pain, isolation. That mechanism only cares about my survival. It doesn't give a shit about my comfort. And I used to talk to the guys in jail. It don't care whether you're spending the rest of your life, 25 to life, or life in prison. You survived. You didn't let that guy punk you, or you didn't let that guy make you look like a fool. You took what was rightfully yours against the machine of the patriarchy. Well, however that worked out in your mind. And it didn't care that you were going to spend the rest of your life in prison. It only cares that you survived, and it worked. You're alive. Okay. So I went from a survival mentality, immersed in this survival thing that I didn't even know was going on, to the capacity to thrive. And like I talked about, make a difference, feel like I belong, contribute, by just being who I am, not by posturing and being somebody else, by being who I am. So, um, where do we go from here, Marty? I got, hopefully that answered or offered some information
Well,
there.
the point that I'm going to offer to the newcomer is that um, when we reach a certain point in doing our recovery work, there is an opening is created, and the opening starts out initially as an emotional space. You've often talked about um, there's a vibrational tone
Mm-hmm.
to our addictive energy. Well, there's a vibrational tone to its antidote.
Yes.
There's its sense. It started out for me, and and if it's the same for you, let me know. But it started
Mm-hmm.
out for me as that sense of
Yeah.
that sense of um, I don't have any. I don't have to do anything right now. I
Right.
don't.
Right.
I'm okay. I'm
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
My other guru, Ken Wilber, talks about this experience in the Buddhist terms. He calls it fear drop. Fear disappears. And when
Yeah.
fear disappears, what shows up in its place is freedom.
Yes.
It's and what is freedom again? We talked about a little bit earlier, and now in this context, freedom is the power to choose intentionally, which is why
Yes.
this process is called, my understanding, you call it intentional living,
Mm-hmm.
because in my capacity to see that I have choices and to see what my choices are, is that's where I have freedom to exercise my power consciously.
Yes.
And that itself has its own reward.
Yes.
There's again, a feeling tone comes from when I get to say, I intend to experience joy today.
Right.
And then notice when joy shows up. So what we're talking about here, what I learned from you is that I'm now in a position in my life, having done this work as committedly as I have for a long time, that I wake up in the morning and I'm calm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't wake up with any fear or worry about what's going to happen. It doesn't mean I don't have shit to do. It doesn't mean I don't have problems to solve. Yes, I do.
Yeah. Mm.
You and I have both gone through serious health challenges in the last year. It doesn't mean that we don't have health challenges that we have to, take care of and navigate. It doesn't mean that we don't face emotional challenges. I have close friends that have passed away or family
Hmm.
members that have died. We deal with those things, but it happens now in a context that has no compulsion to it.
Right.
And so then I'm free to decide how I want to be with it.
Yep.
I shared with you and folks on this podcast in working with a therapist. This was now 3 years ago. She said, "Well, what's your purpose in life?" And we did some work. She did some work with me on the internal stuff. She goes, "I think your purpose in life you might want to consider is to have fun." Well, my little kid, that's all he really wanted. That's all any of us little kids wanted when we were little kids is just to have fun.
Hmm.
And we had these traumatic experiences interposed into our lives that took the fun out of a lot of it. And in a
Yes.
certain kind of way, we had to grow up too fast.
Yeah.
In that sense that you were talking earlier about defending ourselves, that's an adult responsibility. That the
Yes.
adults should have defended us,
Right.
and they didn't. So we had to, because there's no choice. As we say, there's no choice. You have to survive. Um, so now it's almost like as we do this thing that the adult children of alcoholics they call reparenting, a part of the reparenting is to liberate ourselves to have the fun that we didn't have,
Yes.
and not the specific stuff, not
Right.
necessarily running around the playground or riding the bike or doing the trampolines or swimming or playing baseball or whatever, although that's okay too. But for me, it's more having the energy that doing those things brings with it,
Yes.
just the joy. So it's like doing a podcast with you about accountability practice brings me that sense of joy that as a little kid I had playing hide and go seek.
Right. Yeah.
And with this case, nobody's going to call me home after the lights go out.
Right.
I can play the rest of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well into the night.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about here. That's why and I didn't know this when I started the work, kind of like what I heard you say earlier. The first thing you wanted was just relief and sense of peace.
Yeah.
And you didn't know anything about this life that you now have, that
No.
any of this was possible.
No.
And I just, in the remaining time that we have a few more minutes here. Maybe you could just share with the audience just a little bit about how you became to see that there was more to your life than just peace and relief. Because
Yeah.
you've made a lot of changes in your life in the 13 years that I've known you, and they've all been not to give you a hint of what you should say here, but they've all been the result of conscious choice.
Yes. I think um, that I'm there now. No matter what's going on around me, I can choose gratitude, or I could choose um, non-enmeshment, or I could choose the practice, the accountability practice, or we have things like who are you? We have this exercise to identify I'm a gentle, loving, empowering whole man, and go into a mantra to bring that center back. Um, and I'm the author. Living an authentic life says I'm the writer. I'm the producer and the director of my movie. It's like whatever's happening around me, I'm always at choice. And I'm not saying the right choice. I am saying choice because some of the choices I make bring me conflict and discord that really being in it, staying in it, noticing that I help produce it. There's a lesson in there for me. There's something to learn and grow and become more expansive and more calm. One of the benefits is that people say to me, I like being in your vicinity. You seem calm. I feel safe. Well, that was an intent I made a long time ago, is to create safety for healing. Um, and I knew that the energy, if I had an agenda or a need for them to like get it, that's not safe. So I worked on non-resistance, non-interference. It's like, okay, just ask me the question. I'll give you the best answer I can in the moment, best information I can, and not be caught up in whether they get it or they don't get it, or it's all my judgment. And just be available um, from this place of knowing who I am. I'm a gentle, loving, empowering whole man. Um, and I actually like who I am. I remember the first time I had that thought, I like who I've become. It's like, oh, whoa, whoa, that's new. Um, and then settling into it and participating in my life as it comes to me, which is the key. Participating in my life as it comes to me, not controlling how it should be or it has to be, or so.
Well, that sounds like another experience of freedom.
Yes, yeah, I have that on the bottom of the accountability tree. um, Accountability, blame-free, judgment-free, my truth, emotion, I intend to, self-validation. Now I'm like, I intend to be kind. If I say I mean, that's intentional. And then just recently, I added another arrow down and put freedom. That's freedom, freedom of choice. At any given
Right.
moment, I'm at choice. So,
So you said something here. I'm going to wrap this up with this. You said something there that I think is really important, and I'm going to just change the wording a little bit.
okay.
Um, my favorite therapist said to me many years ago, all the one thing all human beings have in common is we just want to be loved.
Yeah.
And all of this stuff that we're dealing with is the result of the desire to be loved. As
Yes.
little kids, we wanted to be loved, and we
Hmm.
had to take what was given to us, and we thought that was love. And it turned out that it may have been the best our parents could do, but there's better ways to experience love, and that's part of what we're learning here.
Yeah.
And so what the liberation is when you say, I like who I've become, what I hear is another version of that is I have learned to love myself just as
Yeah.
I have said I wanted to be. Who do I intend to be? Who do I want to be? And I love that guy.
Yeah.
So for me, that's the same thing that I've learned, which is, you know, if